Connecting the Commonwealth. I am Brian Ramsey along with Eric Douglas and our guest Tammy Combest. How's everybody today?
Doing well, thank you.
Good. Well, hey, listen, before we get started with Tammy, just a couple of quick notes. If you want to get hold of Tammy, you've got her information right here. You can also reach her at 502-400-8083. And if you obviously want to get a hold of us, there's our information. And by the way, if you are a small business owner or an entrepreneur and you think this is kind of cool and you want to be a part of our show, just shoot us a quick email and we'll certainly have a conversation and see if we can't get you on one of our podcasts. So, Tammy, this is all about you today. But let's first talk about how we came to have you on today. So a couple of weeks ago, this is it's been 2 weeks ago now, I guess, we did a podcast with Tom Combest and Amanda Berry, and they have their company does franchisees. So if you wanted to be a franchise or you wanted to own a franchise, those guys would sort of walk you through whether A, you should be a franchisee, or two, sort of what franchise would best fit what you're trying to do. So that was a couple weeks ago. So by the way, if you want to catch that, go back to our podcast or go back to our YouTube channel and catch the one we did a couple of weeks ago. And then last week we did a show with Jeff Crittenden. Now Jeff came to us because Tom worked with Jeff, and Jeff started or bought into a franchise called Oasis Senior Living Advisor, right?
Correct.
And so how this all came to pass was I have been working with Tammy for probably a couple years now, something like that. And we'll get more into that in just a second. But I introduced Jeff to Tammy. And so there is a personal connection there, which we want to go through. But anyway, so we thought it'd be a great connection to do Tom Combest, and then we did Jeff, and then we're doing the interview with Tammy. So that's kind of the connection. So again, if you want to go back and listen to those other couple episodes, jump back to last week and at least listen to Jeff, because there's a connection here that we want to walk through in a few minutes. But anyway, just wanted to lay that out there for those that are interested in going back and listen. All right, so Tammy, now we're back to you. So
it's all about me.
That's right. It's all about you for the next 30 minutes or so. So tell us, what is it that you do? I mean, I know what you do, but tell everybody what you do.
I'm an attorney. And
no attorney jokes, I promise. No attorney jokes.
It's okay. I'm sure some are deserved. Just no joking on my part, though.
Mm-hmm.
I am an attorney of about 25 years.
Yep.
I graduated, it seemed like yesterday, but it's been also forever. Because I have a family and a busy home life and a busy work life. Initially, I was in litigation, and then transitioned as it coincided with some of my extended family and immediate family needs into estate planning and elder law specifically.
Yeah, that's kind of cool, and that's really how we met, right?
That is.
I was looking for an elder care attorney that. Well, I won't go into all that, right? Anyway, we made a connection through your coworker at the time. That I was doing some work with, and said, "Hey, do you guys do elder care?" And he's like, "Yeah, we do. As a matter of fact, I'll introduce you to Tammy." I'm like, "That's been awesome." So
we do. It's just it being a family lawyer, and not in family law, just being the lawyer in the family,
right,
of many aunts and uncles and cousins,
right,
and that sort of thing. You just field a lot of questions that families routinely deal with. And certainly estate planning, and now more so than ever, long-term care, nursing home costs, Medicaid planning, it comes up quite a bit. People refer to it as rehab. There are multiple hospitalizations. My mother was the youngest of 10 siblings, so all of her aging siblings and my cousins we're now at that age where we're caring for our parents.
Yeah.
And so I get a lot of those calls.
Yeah, we talked about that last week with Jeff. We were talking about how, family is now thrown into the middle of this, and it's tough to be able to tell mom and dad they can't live at home, and there can be there's just a lot of stress, even for a spouse that's taking care of a loved one. There is that I get to the point where I just can't I can't do it anymore. It's a hard conversation. So part of the reason why we wanted you on here was to talk about of course, what it is that you do, right? But also to talk about when you're getting to that point that there is some preparedness that you can do as a family. And part of it is making sure your estate's done properly, right? And then as you have aging parents, or if you're parents that are aging, and full disclosure, we did a plan for my parents, right?
That's right.
And so my parents are super healthy. There were no health issues, but they were just like, look, we don't want to leave you guys in a situation where you're having to make a decision, or you're having in a position where we leave you kind of stressed financially. So let's go ahead and do this, make sure our estate plan's in order, right? And so it was kind of a relief on our part, although you met my father, so he was a handful to get to the table, but we got in there, right?
Yes.
We got into the table. So, all right, let's go back. I want to go back. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Okay, let's go back and talk about sort of why you got into law, why it was important to get into it, and then sort of walk us through, because I know at the very beginning you said, hey, I did something a little bit different, which is kind of a unique experience, to some degree. The working for the courts?
Yes.
Right, okay, yeah. This is making sure you're looking at me. I'm like, I swear I wrote that down. And then I want to transition into really the nuts and bolts of what we want to talk about, which is how you actually got into the elder care piece. So sort of walk us through what that looks like.
I'm really proud of my career. I've been very fortunate, very blessed. I graduated from the University of Louisville School of Law, and I clerked for the Honorable John Hebron for 2 years. So that's what introduced me to the federal courts. After that stint, I did several years of insurance defense litigation, and also did some plaintiff's work. I was in court a lot, and I really enjoyed that. Actually, my forte was being out in the courthouses out in the state. With this accent, I could blend in a little bit. So I wasn't necessarily the Louisville girl, and I enjoyed that. But then with young children, those demands were a little high on my schedule, and I went back to the courts, and I worked there for, 10, 13 years for a couple of judges who one, the latest since retired, Judge Moyer. So from there, it just coincided with my parents reaching that point in life where aging issues were really creeping up on them. And that's what brought me to elder law. I'm so grateful my dad did a lot of planning. He did a will. He had his affairs in order. He pressed my mother to do the same. And they were in good shape. It's interesting, though, that they just, and I didn't handle that. I was able to refer them to someone else, obviously. That was important to me. And I'm very fortunate, too, that my sister and I get along so well. We're in a healthy family dynamic, and it's really sad.
We don't often see that.
We don't. Sometimes it's very sad. To
We
see
have a client that I just referred to. We met that actually has not that same family dynamic, to say the least. Right? I mean, there's some issues there.
Yes, though I can still empathize. Just being on the other side of it and being so grateful, I understand really how torn, especially parents can be about how to provide an inheritance for their kids.
Right.
And what I've seen is most people are still thinking in terms of traditional estate planning. And that no longer really addresses our issues. We're living longer. We're spending more time in rehab and nursing homes. We're at a high cost that often leaves no inheritance, or you really need to think of it in terms of any government benefit from Medicaid you receive on long-term nursing care will really wipe out that inheritance that you expected to provide for your kids. So it's one thing when you learn that in the crisis mode. I would hope to provide families with more notice of that up front when they're doing traditional estate planning. Hey guys, be on alert. This is a risk out there. We are alert to risks in many situations in our financial world, and we take out insurance or at least try to make plans. So it's my job to alert folks to this risk, a significant risk that many people face.
Yeah, for sure. So if you would just expand a little bit on when we first met. The very first time I think we met at Honey Brothers. I'm not promoting Honey Brothers. That is the second week in a row that we had a meeting at Honey Brothers. But I promise we're not endorsing them, although it's good coffee. Yes. But we did. We sat at Honey Brothers and we were talking about, hey, this is what you guys do. I told you my experience with working with another person in the elder care, and I just said, I don't know how it even came up, but you were like, well, here's why I got into it. I personally experienced a situation. So just run through that, because I think it's important, because we're going to have people that watch this that go, oh my gosh, that happened to me. I was in crisis mode, and here's kind of what happened. And so maybe just run through that so folks know why you actually started emphasizing in the elder care space.
I was close to my parents. My mother's still living. My father passed away about 3.5 years ago. But I was close to them. They lived in town. They cared for my youngest 2 children in my dad's last years of life, my mother as well. Mm-hmm. So I saw them regularly, and yet I was oblivious to how impaired my father's health was. And I see that in a lot of folks. It's really hard when you have depended so much in ways that you don't fully appreciate until they're gone. You've depended on your folks to be just a stalwart against hard times. And so it was a shift that I didn't want to make easily, to then caring for my dad. And so only until he was in crisis mode did I realize, this is more than just bad health. My dad suffered from dementia. Okay. So it was at that time I had to take a look at what he had done in the estate planning side and see, wow, dad needs a power of attorney, mom too. Right. We're looking at rehab. He was going in and out of the hospital between there and rehab, and then eventually in long-term care. So dementia it was a big surprise to me of what that looked like and how that affected your health, and how it shortens your life. So I walked through that with Dad. And then at the same time, my mother is now an Alzheimer's. She has moderate Alzheimer's and is in a care home. But I wasn't fully grasping how much Dad's illness was affecting her health. And I hear those stories all the time, how it's really hard to shift from being the child to being a parent to your parent, and that you really are in crisis mode, and it makes it difficult under the stress to fully appreciate how fragile they are. You mentioned the car keys. That's one of the first things. Yeah. It declines from there, and it's a tough road. So I have a lot of empathy for people, and I'm excited though too that I have services that can ease that transition. Yep. Yeah. Hugely ease that transition.
Yeah, sure. So hey, listen, if you're listening to our podcast, of course, if you're watching YouTube, you can see Tammy's information right here. If you are listening to our podcast, best phone number to reach her is 502-400-8083, or you can reach the office number 502-721-7139. But hey, one of the things I want to kind of walk through is we see this all the time, right? Eric and I, we have clients that are elderly, right? And they come in, and we talked about it a little bit with Jeff last week. So if you didn't catch that, make sure you jump into last week and look at Jeff Crittenden, because, and I want to talk about how he potentially helped you a little bit. Okay, I want you to talk about that. But one of the things I want to tackle first is, and we see this, and that is we'll talk about our side, but what are some of the more common mistakes you see folks make, that if you could say, don't do this, right? Whatever you do, don't do this. Or whatever you do, make sure your family member doesn't do this. What are maybe, one of the two, 1, 2, 3, whatever that you commonly see? What are some of the mistakes?
An online power of attorney document.
Okay. You mean somebody goes online to get a power of attorney?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Like a Legal Zoom or a Legal Shield type of a thing?
I see many, and I don't know where they come from, but a lot of times they are just so brief, so inadequate, so many gaping holes. It's really important to have a very thorough power of attorney document. In Kentucky, we are required to be very explicit about the powers that the principal, which is usually the elderly parent, intends for an agent to have, which is usually a responsible adult child, sometimes the spouse, then a child. But it's very important that that power of attorney document be explicit and thorough enough so that it really is a tool that you can use in times of crisis. Mm-hmm. We can't anticipate everything, so it's very important that that document contain a lot of contingencies that we've seen and can prepare for. So not that you'll use every power listed, but it's important that it be thorough.
Yeah, I'd say one of the, and we'll just kind of go back and forth here, but I'd say one of the more common mistakes that we see on our end is that they never, we see clients that come in that either have, let's say, parents that are in care now, and we see kids that come in, and I say kids, I mean, we're talking kids that are in their 50s and 60s, so, but they're still kids, right? But they'll come in and, I'm taking care of mom and dad, or they're in a facility, or I'm trying to get them in a facility, and I'm trying to, figure out what's going on, and yet mom and dad have now spent through everything. They don't really have any assets left, and now the kids are funding mom or dad's care, and they're trying to figure out how to retire and save and do all what they want to do, and yet they're still having to fund for mom and dad. So I would say one of the most common mistakes is people don't plan. And you hate to plan to be in a facility. You hate to plan for mom and dad to be in care. But I think it's important to have that conversation to say, hey, let's just look at how things are today, and can mom and dad make it, number one, and what does their asset pool look like? And then two, if there is nothing, how do we plan as a kid so that we can still take care of mom or dad, right? I mean, that's kind of one of the mistakes that we see.
If you think of it, elder law is somewhat recent, at least in terms of law. Mm-hmm. It's only been the past decade or a little more where we really need to focus on elder law issues. And I would encourage folks to educate themselves, not just online, but through an elder lawyer specifically. What I see often is that families will spend down assets that they shouldn't have spent down. Right. They'll sell a car, or they'll drain their retirement accounts. And there's no one there to alert them that that's not necessary at this point in your situation. And really what you do is delay government benefits to help pay for that care. And no one is really going to help you walk through that the way an elder lawyer can help you walk through that.
Right, exactly, yeah. Go ahead.
I was going to say, could you maybe explain the difference? Because you said the concept of elder law is relatively new in the past decade or so. Can you maybe explain a little bit, in a little bit more detail, the differences between elder law and just kind of an estate planning in general?
Well, I suppose the way I'm using it is that we're no longer looking at folks who in midlife create a will and expect their children to inherit all their assets. Today we're looking at folks who, because of long-term care nursing costs, will really wipe through their savings. Yep. The average stay is 2 to 3 years. You hear different averages on monthly cost. I see anywhere between $5,000 and $9,000 a month. Yeah, so you can do the math at how quickly your savings are wiped out. So really that will you've created can be pretty much for, it doesn't accomplish what you intended to accomplish. Right. And then what's worse is of that savings, there are probably categories of assets that don't need to be spent down in order to qualify for government pay on those long-term nursing care costs. And there are many steps. It's a very complicated area. It can be convoluted, very difficult to understand. But I see a lot of times families not being aware of what are resources that need to be spent and what are resources that don't need to be spent, or what steps can you take early on, what intermediate steps can you take in order to preserve the financial picture in the best way possible, not only for an inheritance, but most importantly for the care of your parents in those last difficult years.
Yeah. Yeah, and so I'd say another one that we run into quite a bit, and I know you probably experience it way more than what we do, but we have folks that come in, let's say that are, I'm going to say in their mid to late 50s, and their children are now grown, they're 20, you probably know where I'm going with this, they're 20-something years old, and we go, hey, do you have a will? Yep, sure do. Do you have all your other documents? Yeah, sure do. Well, my kid was 2 when we did it. It's like, well, how old is your kid now? Well, he's 20. Okay, well, time to go back and refresh. So how often would you suggest that somebody review their estate documents?
Anytime you have a major life event,
Yep.
at least within your own family or your own personal space, your own mind, think about how this might impact what you had initially planned. And certainly a call to that lawyer who prepared those, it would be in order. If it's marriage, death, divorce,
yeah.
bankruptcy, or even just a financial strain, a different asset picture, or it can be a positive thing, a different venture in terms of business or different opportunities. Any major life change, I think, warrants a review of your estate plan.
Yeah, sure, yeah. And so we do, Eric has seen this, but we, and I think you and I have chatted about it a little bit, but in some of the meetings we talk about, we use different examples that we've all experienced, and we talk about the different levels of estate planning. And so if we're taking basic estate planning, right, and so it's just a basic will, your powers of attorney, your trust. I'm a big fan of trust. You guys know that, or Eric knows that for sure, but you know that too. But and we joke around about it a lot. But anyway, so what I would, and I want you to kind of verify that. So we'd say if you have basic estate documents, you're really planning for. We say that you're planning for dying. So you die, and here's kind of what happens to make sure all your stuff's in place so that things run as smoothly as possible for the people that are there to take care of things after you're gone, right? That's the basics of estate planning.
Right.
Okay. So then you've got the more, what I say is advanced planning, which I say is level 3. I know that's not a technical term. That's an internal art term.
Patent pending.
But I want to go back to Eric's point, and that is, the more advanced planning that we're talking about, the elder care planning, I want people to remember that if you're listening or you're watching, basic estate planning is for taking care of things when you're gone. So you're dead. I don't want to be crude, but when you've passed away, here's what happens. But elder care planning is planning for living, right? It's what happens to things while you're still living. And that's the distinct difference that I like to say to people is, what can we do to preserve things while you're living versus after you're gone?
I cannot stress enough what a favor, what a gift you are providing for your adult children by making plans, even in just estate planning, traditional estate planning, a will, to have all that sorted out so that after you're gone, your children know what you want to happen to your assets is a wonderful gift to your kids. It's such a stressful time.
Yep.
All the more so in those last what can be difficult years of life health-wise. If you make plans, I cannot tell you how many times families, adult children come in and they are pulling their hair out because one parent or the other has just been in a state of denial, and it makes it really tough on families. So if you can take steps to prepare, and trusts are a wonderful way to do that. I'm a big fan of trusts too,
Yep.
where you can make plans for how to manage things during your incapacity, or for Medicaid planning specifically. You do such a favor for your children you help them through that stressful time so that they can focus on the care and love of the parent or the elderly person, rather than how are we going to pay these bills? How are we going to do this? Do we have this that we need in order to take care of them this way? It is overwhelming. So the more you plan in advance, the bigger favor you do for your whole family. Again, so you can focus on the relationships and what are most important in life.
Yeah, for sure.
How helpful do you find it to involve, well, especially the wife or the husband or both parties in a marriage, but how helpful do you find it to involve the children that are ultimately going to be affected by the plan that's put in place up front?
And depending on the plan, it's essential sometimes to include at least one child who will either serve as trustee or as agent or whatever capacity. That's wonderful when we can get at least one. And sometimes, I mean, it's common to have all. It can be a crowded room. We need a large conference room. And those are wonderful ways to help those families.
Well, that definitely seems like a gap sometimes when we first bring prospects into the office and we're discussing their claim, and we'll sit down with, in some cases, multi-millionaire clients or potential clients, and their kids have no clue how much their parents are worth, and they have no idea how they're going to be set to inherit their legacy one day. And all the things that could happen up until that point.
Well, that's interesting because there are times when privacy for the principals is really important to preserve. But then when we do become incapacitated and need end-of-life wishes expressed, we do need to include the adult children at that point.
Yeah, for sure. So the moral of the story is just do the work, right? Go ahead, and even if you're not to a point where mom and dad are in a facility or they even need care, and just like my parents are super healthy, right? My dad shoots, he's 79 years old and shoots his age constantly. Actually under his age, so props to you if you watch this. But he shot 72 the other day. That's pretty solid. But so my parents are very active, but they went ahead and did the proactive planning just so that there was no issue in the event that there was an immediate issue, because you never know, right? I mean, something can happen and it's not a slow progression. It's an immediate, all of a sudden we need care, and you never know when that's going to happen. So I would just tell you that if you've not heard anything over the last weekend, this week, just make sure you do your planning. And Tammy's a great resource, I'll tell you. Reach out to her and go ahead.
We can make it as painless as possible. We can discuss many options and give you choices and educate you. I think that my mom's a retired school teacher, so I think sometimes that channels through me to just provide information. As a young lawyer, I even thought information is power. Preparation is power.
Yeah.
That sounds really corny, but when you're nervous in any setting, you're grasping for whatever you can to get you through the moment. And that analogy applies to elder law planning. It's the more information you have, the better choices you make, and the more your family will benefit emotionally and legally and in many ways from your advanced planning.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, for sure. All right, so just real quick, and then I want to touch on one other subject before we end today. And that is, if you want to reach out to Tammy, phone number for her, 502-400-8083, or you can, if you're on YouTube, you can catch her number there as well. She's got two different ways to contact her. You can zoom in a little bit. Sorry we couldn't make that any bigger, but you got her email as well. Let's talk about a subject that you're acquainted with, that I will soon, knock on wood, be acquainted with, and that is something we deal with a lot, but it's incredibly important, and there is all kinds of different dynamics associated with this, and that is estate planning for blended families. See it all the time, right?
Yes.
So talk about that a little bit, and I sort of have my own views on it, but kind of chat about that for a second.
Isn't it funny that I left out remarriage in that list of life events where you might need to review your estate plan?
Yeah.
That's a big one.
It's huge, yeah.
That's a big one.
For sure.
And we see folks in a situation of remarriage, not only in midlife, but well beyond retirement age. And those present specific issues that have to be addressed. So there's a wide spectrum of what kind of plans or what information you need depending on where you are in life. Most often we're dealing with blended families and how to provide for one set of kids and another set of kids in a way that honors the hard work of biological parents, but also recognizes the contribution of step parents. It's complicated.
Yeah,
It's
for sure.
complicated, and a will can only do so much to address all those issues. I found trusts to be the best vehicle to address the stickier issues for blended families.
Yeah, and I would agree. Trusts are the way to go. But I would say that so we just recently had a couple in that were they're blended family, and the interesting part is, so this is going to get really crazy, but this is again some of the things that we deal with, right? We had a couple that had just recently got married. The husband was older, and the wife was a little bit younger, so their age gap in kids were kind of significant. The father or the husband in this case had kids that were older, like in their late 20s, and she had kids that were a lot younger, and I'm talking pre-teenage years. And then they got together and had a child of their own. So it was very interesting dynamically, because they were like, what in the world, what do we do? Because in this particular case, he had his own business and sold a business and then started another business. So he really came into the family with a lot of assets, and she came in with not that many assets. And so they were like, well, how do we make this fair? And it was like, we went through graph after chart after chart after chart, trying to figure out how to make it all work. But it is very different. And the one thing he said, which is hilarious, and by the way, if you ever do any estate work with us, I'm always going to reference Jimmy the Pool Boy. Everybody thinks it's funny, but it's like the spouse married Jimmy the Pool Boy. And I forget what we use for Sally the bartender or something for the man. But anyway, point being, one of his main concerns, because he was older, was if something happens to me, he lives in a fairly significant size house. He said, hey, I want her to live there, but I don't want Jimmy the Pool Boy moving in, right? I don't want that. And so, again, we had the attorney, it wasn't you, but we had the attorney draft a document that said, live there all you want, Jimmy the Pool Boy can't move in, right? Got to go somewhere else. So anyway, so that's you hear that, right?
Wait, I hear that, and
Yeah.
it's interesting that it can be uncomfortable if the couple has not really sorted it through before they come to me,
Right.
which happens. But what's also really interesting is that different people have different notions of fairness. What is fair?
Right.
And that's okay. You can respect a difference of opinion and work with a couple to achieve what they have determined is fair. But I tell you, it's a wide spectrum. And some people feel too generous. Some people feel stingy. And as they're working through that complexity, it's important as the estate planner to respect that and help them think through that, and then feel comfortable with that decision and make sure that those decisions are reflected accurately in their trust document and estate planning.
Yeah. The other thing that was pretty interesting is we did some planning a couple years ago for a couple that it was a blended family, and it was a more mature blended family. So both husband and wife had kids that were much older. I think they were like in their late 50s, early 60s when they got married. But the interesting thing was the husband had one son and the wife had 4 children. And so they were like, well, what in the world do we do at this point? Because you can't split it equally, because then the husband's son would be far less, as a portion of, of the estate. So we kind of had to go through that, and we solved it by using an insurance policy, right? We said, hey, let's do this, and we can set it up for her children and all that good stuff. So anyway, we worked it out, but that's very complicated when you have an unequal number of children and different asset sizes that come in. It can be very challenging. But what I will tell you is, sitting down with a good financial planner and a good estate attorney will do you wonders. I will tell you, because we've not seen everything, we've seen a lot, and we bring a lot to the table, especially when we work together, right? When you say?
Exactly. Here's the thing with estate planning and attorney, it's so essential to coordinate efforts with the family's financial planner or CPA or whoever they're dealing with, so that the entire picture reflects the estate plan. That's making sure beneficiary designations are in order,
right,
life insurance or long-term care insurance, and the trust document, the will, all of those things are a cohesive tool to accomplish the estate plan.
Yeah,
So,
for sure. Because last thing you want is for somebody to come in to see you and you draft the best estate plan you possibly can, but if you don't title assets properly, you don't change beneficiaries, and you don't ever tell your financial advisor, kind of doesn't work very well when you pass away and all of a sudden, oh, great documents, yeah, nothing's titled properly.
Hey, and it's a nice way to have some interaction with non-lawyers. So a bit of a lawyer joke on that.
No, that's good. Well, listen, so we'll just kind of wrap it up. But I appreciate you coming in. And if you don't not had your will updated or you not updated your estate documents, please reach out to Tammy. She's a great resource. If you're considering elder law planning, or elder care planning is, I guess is the proper terminology, or you have parents that may be in that phase where we're starting to see some issues and you want to know legally from a standpoint how things look or how they should look, make sure you reach out to Tammy. She's a great resource. Great enough to where I took my parents and we did a plan with Tammy, so that ought to say something about it. But anyway, if you have, even outside of estate planning, if you just have basic estate plan needs, you just need a will in your young family, you need a will, some powers of attorney, that sort of thing, reach out to Tammy. Again, great resource. Let me pop her information back on the screen. Before we sign off, a phone number for Tammy, 502-400-8083, or all her information on the screen for our YouTube watchers. And last but not least, I'll have Eric sign us off because I can never remember how to do that.
Well, make sure if you're watching on YouTube, hit the subscribe button there down in the corner. If you're listening on podcast, please make sure you're listening, subscribing, rating, and reviewing. That's how we get any traction to kind of share the messages that we have here, or share the content that we have within our podcast. So we really appreciate you listening and sharing the content.
Guys, have a good week.
Thanks.
The information given herein is taken from sources at IFP Advisors, LLC, doing business as Independent Financial Partners, IFP, IFP Securities, doing business as IFP, and its advisors believed to be reliable, but it is not guaranteed by us as to accuracy or completeness. This is for informational purposes only, and in no event should be construed as an offer to sell or solicitation of an offer to buy any securities or products. Please consult your tax and/or legal advisor before implementing any tax and/or legal-related strategies mentioned in this publication, as IFP does not provide tax and/or legal advice. Opinions expressed are subject to change without notice and do not take into account the particular investment objectives, financial situation, or needs of individual investors. This report may not be reproduced, distributed, or published by any person for any purpose without IFP's express prior written consent. Securities offered through IFP Securities, LLC, doing business as Independent Financial Partners, IFP, member of FINRA and SIPC. Investment advice offered through IFP Advisors, doing business as IFP, a registered investment advisor. IFP and Family Wealth Planning Partners are not affiliated. The information given herein is taken from sources at IFP Advisors, LLC, doing business as IFP, IFP Securities, LLC, doing business as IFP, and its advisors believed to be reliable, but it is not guaranteed by us as to accuracy or completeness. This is for informational purposes only, and in no event should be construed as an offer to sell or solicitation of an offer to buy any securities or products. Please consult your tax and/or legal advisor before implementing any tax and/or legal-related strategies mentioned in this publication, as IFP does not provide tax and/or legal advice. Opinions expressed are subject to change without notice and do not take into account the particular investment objectives, financial situation, or needs of individual investors.